Welcome everyone, I'm Plays Games, this is EVE Online yet again, and today we're going to be talking about turret weapons. This turret's mechanic works the same way for laser turrets, projectile weapon turrets, hybrid weapon turrets, and indeed any other weapon system which has a turret tracking score attribute listed on its info page. The differences between all those different types of turrets will be covered in future videos. Unlike missiles, turrets are extremely complicated and very technical, so strap yourselves in, sit yourselves down, make sure you have a stimulant of some kind close at hand, and let's get into it. Now the TLDR version of this guide is, if you're using short range turrets, use a stasis webifier on the target and use the approach or orbit buttons. If you're using long range turrets, use tracking computers or tracking enhancers and use the keep at range button. Right, that's the easy bit out of the way, time to get technical. First of all, when a turret weapon fires a shot, the game assigns that shot a randomly generated number somewhere between 0 and 1. This number will be several decimal places. This same number will then be used to determine both the chance to hit and the amount of damage from that shot if it hits. Hit chance is based on quite a few different things. Firstly, the range your turret is operating in, then the relationship between your turret's tracking speed and the angular velocity of the target, and finally of all, the size of the target. So we'll do these in order. We'll have a look at the range first. Turrets have two ranges listed on their info page, which we'll have a look at here. The first one is the optimal range, and the second one is the accuracy fall-off range. At between 0 meters and your optimal range, you will have a 100% base chance to hit, and that can be seen in space by using the tactical overlay, which I'll highlight here for you. You just turn it on, and this is what you see. When you mouse over your weapon, you'll see that this inner red ring is our optimal range. When you mouse over the weapon, it tells you that the optimal range is 12 kilometers, and that's what we see here on the inner red ring. Now, at your optimal range plus your fall off range, your base chance to hit falls to 50%, and this is the outer red ring we see here. Now, luckily for us, the game actually adds the optimal and fall off range together to give us this statistic which we see. And the red ring, if we actually show info on it, it says here that the accuracy fall off is 32.8, but the game's already added that to our optimal of 12, which gives us the 45. So you can tell at a glance which one you're fighting in, and at optimal range plus twice your fall off, your chance to hit drops to somewhere around 6%. Now this isn't shown when you mouse over it. This red dotted line here is actually our maximum targeting range. But if we know that our fall off range is 45, you can double that just in your mind, and you'll know that your 6% chance to hit is somewhere around 90. So this weapon can hit quite far. But obviously you'd rather stay within optimal to keep it at its best chance to hit. Now I kept saying base chance to hit because the range is only one part of the two-hit equation. The next part is the relationship between your turret's tracking speed and the angular velocity of the target. We have a brave volunteer with us again today, so we can take a look at their angular velocity. Angular velocity can be seen in the overview, and you can enable it by opening overview settings up here, going to open overview settings, clicking the columns tab, and checkboxing the angular velocity, and it'll instantly show up. See here, I'm just toggling it. Make sure you use angular. You can use radial or transversal or just basic velocity, but angular is the one the game actually uses to determine hit chance. So this is what we want to have a look at. Keeping it simple, the angular velocity is how fast a target is moving across your sights. It's way more complicated than that, but this is the easy description that we are going to be using in this video. Now we have to find our turret's tracking speed. If we show info on it again, see here it says turret tracking. Now unfortunately we cannot use this turret tracking score to directly compare it to the angular velocity column because they're not using the same things. In the past, you could, but the developers decided to change it to make each weapon easier to compare to each other weapon, instead of it being easier to compare it to targets in space. And you can undo this change by performing the following mathematics. For capital size weapons, which are XL, you can divide this turret tracking score by 10. For battleship size weapons, you divide by 100. For cruiser-sized medium weapons, you divide it by 320, and for frigate-sized weapons, you divide it by 1000. So our 650mm artillery says here M, so it's a medium weapon. So to convert this turret tracking score into the same kind of thing that the angular velocity uses, we'll divide this by 320, and when we do that, we get an actual tracking score, so we can actually directly compare these now. So what use is this? Well, basically what you want is for your tracking number to be larger than the angular velocity of the target, because this makes it easier to hit. You can do this in a few ways. You can boost your turret's tracking directly with modules such as tracking enhancers and tracking computers. There's also tracking rigs and tracking implants, and very probably some tracking combat booster drugs as well. I have a tracking computer fitted to this ship, and I've loaded it with a tracking script to specialise it in tracking to give it the maximum tracking bonus, so I'll turn it on and see what difference this makes. Show info again after we've turned it on. So our turret tracking's gone up to 14.2506, and when we divide that by 320, it's now much larger than our opponent's angular velocity, so our two-hit chance has been increased quite dramatically. Originally, our actual tracking speed was roughly the same as this target. When it's orbiting at this distance, at this speed, it's just about exactly the same as our turret tracking. As well as enhancing your own tracking speed, you can reduce the angular velocity either by slowing the target down with a stasis webifier, or by using the keep at range or approach buttons. Keep at range is this one here with the two arrows, and approach is this one here with the arrow and the dot. So by using these, your ship tries to keep itself lined up with the target, so we'll be using the keep at range button. You can right click this button to set it to a custom value. What you want is for your custom value to be somewhere between your optimal range and fall off, but slightly closer to optimal. So I think 15 kilometers is probably about right, so we'll right click this and just type in 15,000 meters. We're going to click this. We'll remember that the angular velocity at the minute is 0.034. So we'll now keep the target at range, so your ship actually starts to move to try and keep itself lined up. And our speed is just going up and down as we turn to track the target with the ship itself. Yeah, it's down to 0.027, 0.026, 0.025. So we're pulling range on them and keeping them lined up with our own ship. 0.022, 0.021. Okay, the target is now going to orbit us at a slightly closer range, and we'll use the web on it. Okay, now the target is orbiting at a much closer range, but he's going at the same speed, so due to the way the angles work, their angular velocity is going way up. It was 0.034 when they were at 15 kilometers, now they're about 7.5. It's 0.058 and rising, so we'll grab them with the webifier. This will slow them down by 60%. And we'll watch what this does to their angular velocity. It will take time for them to slow down. They don't instantly get cut by 60%, but they are slowing. And their angular velocity is dropped way down. Here we go. 0.03, 0.02. Okay, so that's another way you can lower the angular velocity. The final part of the to-hit equation is the size of the target. This uses the target signature almost like a multiplier to the tracking and angular relationship. Simply put, the bigger the target, the easier it is to hit. So if this very same target here was orbiting us at exactly the same distance and exactly the same speed, but it was larger, we'd hit it more often, and if it was smaller, we'd miss it more often. You can make targets appear larger by firing a target painter at it, as we saw in the previous guide on missiles. Obviously, you don't have time to be doing all this mathematics during combat, but you can do the mathematics on your own turrets beforehand and memorise your weapon's tracking speed. You can then look at the angular velocity column and make an informed decision as to what your best course of action is. Using keep at range or approach will keep you lined up with the target, but this will make you easier to hit for the target as well, so bear that in mind. Right, let's make use of our volunteer and do a practical demonstration of hit chance. First of all, we'll send it back out to 15 kilometers. Okay, so our target is back out at 15 kilometers, and its angular velocity is going to get back up to 0.034, which is where it was. So he's going to hold this orbit path because we're not moving to make it easier for him, so this isn't going to fluctuate wildly. For all of these tests, what I'm going to do, I'm going to load exactly 20 ammunition into each of our 5 turrets and fire until we're empty, and that will give us 100 cycles. All we're paying attention to here is just how many hits we get and how many misses we have. So let's open fire and start counting. Okay, we're out of ammo. We fired 100 cycles, and during that we missed 51 times out of 100. That's not very good. Now we're going to do the same again. We're going to fire 20 ammo from each of our 5 turrets for 100 cycles, but this time we'll turn on the tracking computer and use the keep at range button. And the keep at range will still be set at around 22 kilometers, which is just between our optimal and fall off range. Let's see the difference this makes. We'll wait until we get out to 22 before opening fire. So our tracking will be better, and the angular velocity between ourselves and the target will be smaller. Okay, let's open fire. Well, that went much better. We only missed 22 times this time, and the last time it was 51, so I'll come to a halt. Now we'll get the target to orbit us at the close range now. Again, we'll wait for it to come into range. Okay, so we've turned off the tracking computer, so our tracking is back to 0.034. The target is orbiting us, or attempting to orbit us at 7.5 kilometers. So he's inside an optimal range, so our base chance is 100% because it's between 0 and our optimal. But his angular velocity is 0.06, and our tracking is slower than it was before we turned the tracking computer off. So again, we'll fire 100 rounds into it and we'll see how many misses we get. And we've run out of ammo once again. That time around, 84 of our 100 shots missed. That's because we're using long range artillery, which has pretty poor turret tracking, and because the target is orbiting us really close up and has a high angular velocity. Now all of these tests have been done with long range artillery, which has a long optimal and really slow tracking speed. So what I think we're going to do, we're going to go and refit to short range weapons and do all these tests again. Okay, one quick trip to the station to refit later. We're back with 5 220 Vulcan autocannon 2s, which are much shorter range. If we mouse over, you see the inner range for optimal is 1350 meters. You have to zoom in so close you can actually almost see the turret models. And the fall off range is only about 20. So as before, we'll do all the tests again. First of all, we'll let the target get out to 15 kilometers and start orbiting us. And we'll just put 100 rounds into it, and we'll see how many hit and how many miss. Our turret tracking speed is significantly faster, 51.0048, which gives us an actual turret tracking of 0.015, which is much faster than 0.034. But then, it is orbiting out close to the edge of our fall-off range, so our base chance to hit is only going to be about 60%. But we'll open fire. Let's do 100 rounds. Okay, so that was 29 misses out of 100, which is much better than the artillery did because we have much faster tracking. Okay, so now we want to do keep at range and turn the tracking computer on. Now our keep at range is going to be different. It was at 22 because that was between optimal and fall off and closer to optimal. So our optimal and fall off closer to optimal is going to be something around 5,000 meters, because the ship has much closer range. So let's do that. Let's keep it range at 5,000, wait until we get closer to that and just do it with the tracking computer. And let's do another 100 rounds. Now we had 27 misses there, which wasn't much better than 29. That's because we're using it short range, and even though we're trying to keep it range at 5 kilometers, the target is faster than us, so we were still missing quite a lot at the time. Long range artillery was actually more accurate than the autocannons were when it was using the tracking computer and keep it range. Okay, the target's now come in close, so again we'll do 100 rounds without the tracking computer on, just at this range, and we'll see how many hits and how many misses we get. Well, that was only 13 misses. So you remember the 650mm artillery missed 84 times, and this only missed 13 because it's got much faster tracking. And now for the final test, we'll both webify and tracking computer this target at its close range. Okay, so we've got the tracking computer on, we're webbing the target, and we're going to approach it, and we're going to open fire. Now we had a grand total of 3 misses that time. As you see from our experiment with long range weapons, you have a good chance of hitting when you're using tracking computers and keeping it range, and when using short range weapons you use webifiers and approach to get the least misses. Now we know how to get more hits on a target. Well, what about dealing more damage? If we have a look at the information page of the ammunition, which is best to do from the fitting page, we'll show it. This is how much damage this particular ammunition does. Unlike missiles, we cannot simply compare these two damages to the target's resistances and deal that much damage every shot. If you watched the previous guide on missiles, you saw that every single shot did exactly the same numbers of damage every time. When it comes to turrets, these numbers are modified by the hit quality. The hit quality is determined by the 2-hit chance, which is in turn affected by the random number which was assigned to it way back when we first opened fire. The result will be a hit of a random quality that does somewhere between 0.5 times and 3 times the damage we see listed here on the ammunition's information page. The combat log can be configured to show the quality of the hits just here. You go to Neocom, Utilities, Log and Messages, and you go to Combat Settings. You turn on this that says Hit Quality. The various types of hit quality you will see and the damage that they do are as follows. Grazes do between 0.5 and 0.625 of your damage. Glances do 0.625 to 0.75. Hits do 0.75 to 1. Penetrates do 1 to 1.25. Smashes do 1.25 to 1.49. And wrecks do 3 times. As you can see, wrecks are an outlier. Most of the time you'll get either between a graze and a smash, so between 0.5 and 1.5% of your damage. Wrecks are a very special case, which only have a 1% chance of happening, but there is always that 1% chance of a triple damage wrecking shot if the target has a non-zero chance to hit. So if we were firing our 220mm autocannons at a target way out at the edge of our double fall-off range, 99% of the time we'll miss because it's way beyond our optimal and fall-off ranges, but 1% of the time we would land a triple damage wrecking shot, even if the target has a very high angular velocity and even if it was really small. We can actually do some more practical testing with that. So as we know, our fall-off range on this weapon is 18, so double that is 36, call it 37. 37 plus 1300 is only about 38, 39. So what we'll do now, we'll send our brave volunteer way out to almost exactly our double fall-off range and orbit us at that range. If you recall at the start of the video, I said that double fall-off range plus optimal gives you a chance to hit at 6%. So we're going to get our intrepid volunteer to orbit just outside that range, so our chance to hit will be really small, way under 6%. So hopefully, during the course of these 100 shots we're about to pop into him, at least one of them will be a wrecking shot. Let's find out.
Our module has run out of charges.
There we have it. We got 1 graze, because I think that was our 4 or 5% chance of a normal shot hitting, but we also got 1 wrecking shot. 1 wrecking shot out of 100 is exactly 1%, so we did land a triple damaging wrecking shot on him. This mechanic can be used to great effect in large fleets, with hundreds of players firing many hundreds of weapons. It means that at least some of them are going to land a triple damage shot every cycle, even when everyone else misses. Say for example it was a battleship fleet, which have 8 guns each. 800 guns missing 99% of the time means 792 misses, but it does mean 8 hits. 8 hits dealing triple damage is the same as 24 regular damages, and that's a whole ton of damage when it comes to battleship size weapons, and it will hit any target regardless of its speed and size. This can simply delete any unwary enemy ships, or it can delete you if you are unwary, so do be careful around large fleets because they can hit you. The relationship between hit chance and hit quality is not linear, as can be seen on this graph. The quality of the hit is determined by the 2 hit chance. At 100 chance to hit, you'll see a fairly even spread of all the damage qualities, averaging out at around 100% of the listed damage over many cycles, because it is an average. At 75% chance to hit, your average damage falls to only around 65% of the damage. That's because you're getting less smashing and penetrating hits, and you'll be getting slightly more glances and grazes. At 50% chance to hit, it drops to only around 38% of the damage, because again, you're getting less penetrates and hits, and you're doing more glances and grazes. So as well as hitting less often, you're actually landing worse quality shots of the ones that do hit, so you're dealing less damage per hit overall. So all of this means that this damage stat here and the DPS shown on your ship's fitting screen can't really be relied upon at all. They're only theoretical averages, assuming that you hit every single time. So in practice, it relies on both the 2-hit formula and the damage quality formulas, both of which in turn rely on a randomly generated number. So all you can do is to try and manipulate the formula as best you can by fighting at the correct range, by increasing your tracking speed, or by decreasing the angular velocity of the target, or by making the target larger, or a combination of all 4 of these. Okay, let's do some more practical testing. This time, we're not counting how many misses we get, we're counting how much of each hit quality. So let's get on and do it. Okay, so that's the end of the first test. We managed to hit it 58 times. Of those 58 hits, 18 were graze, 6 were glance, 28 were hit, 5 were penetrate. We got no smashing shots at all, and we got 1 wrecking shot. Okay, so the next test we're going to do is with the tracking computer on and keep it range set to around 20 kilometers. And we'll do another 100 shots. We'll see how many hits we get and what quality they are. Okay, so that's the end of the second practical test. This time we got 84 hits, so we were more accurate, which was what we expected, because we knew that from when we did the 2-hit chance test. Of the 84 hits, 12 were grazes, 17 were glance, 22 were hits, 27 were penetrates, 6 were smashes, but we didn't get any wrecking shots this time. So as we can clearly see from our results, not only were we hitting more often, but the hits we got were of better quality. This kind of proves the TLDR we did at the very start of the video. When using long range weapons, use tracking modules and the keep at range button. Not only will you hit more often, you'll get better quality hits. And when you're using short range weapons, use webs and the approach button. So this brings us to the end of a very technical and complicated guide to gunnery. The nitty gritty bits were complicated, the TLDR is quite easy. Hope you found this informative and I hope you come back for the next one. Until then, do take very good care of yourselves and all those around you. I'm going to go and take good care of myself by laying down in a darkened room to recover from having to script this nightmare. I'll speak to you later.